We have about, I think 20 mintes with Dan left.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you guys can continue.
Yeah, we will.
Sorry
continue.
to our listeners. I'm gonna have to jump out, but
that's fine. But I'd like to. Can we finish the story of the limes and your family?
So, so how did that all wrap up? What?
Yep.
Are you still suffering?
No, we don't have Lyme any longer, but that's only until we got into the third set of 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I developed 2, 3, and I had masses in my breasts, both breasts, that were tied to one was tied to chickenpox virus in me, and one was tied to a parasite, the Babesia parasite. So what we found is that the 4 years of taking vitamins and things never killed the diseases. It was making our body strong, but it was not eradicating the diseases.
Right.
So when we found this third doctor who was also a chiropractor, but he was versed in molecular biology, and his sole thing is to look for in blood and stool and saliva and urine and all that for infectious agents. I mean, that's what he does. And metals. He looks for chemicals, metals, and organisms that cause disease. And Ryan being all atrophied, and so we took Brian to him, and Ryan being atrophied and all that was tied to a mycoplasma infection. He actually had ALS markers, Lou Gehrig's disease markers, and the symptoms of Lou Gehrig's. And I had read a little while earlier, a woman, Dr. Leslie Taylor, she writes a lot on mycoplasmas. There was a big infection with that in the Gulf War and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. A lot of people that were inoculated before they went into Gulf War had things like mycoplasmas in them, and it was causing infertility and things in a lot of the soldiers and wives and things.
Yeah, I doubt that was planned.
What I think is sometimes, I don't know that, I can't necessarily say in my mind that I think it's intentional, but we incubate vaccines in animals and stuff, and you have to believe, I think that God makes us all individual. Like, the animals are different from us. We're not to intermingle our makeup in that way. And when you pull out of an animal and put into a human, you're likely to pull things that you don't mean to, which cause disease in the human body.
Sure.
And I think that's a lot of what kind of happened. So I read information from Dr. Leslie Taylor that mycoplasmas are implicated in ALS, a particular mycoplasma. And so I remembered Ryan when he was first tested with our Lyme doctor years ago. He was positive for mycoplasmas, and I said, please, doctor, please test him again for mycoplasmas. And he didn't, and Ryan was positive. And we treated mycoplasmas with neem leaf, and my son just totally restored.
Wow. That's amazing.
I think it's incredible how many diseases that you've listed tonight that are diagnosed as scoliosis or ALS or Lou Gehrig's, or there were just a whole bunch of them, and it was all solved by just simple little issues, things that were going on, and they weren't really a disease at all. But like you said, though, they're just grouping symptoms together.
And how about that they were all creations of God that saved them? It wasn't a drug, a combination of chemicals.
Right. And then we have to realize, I had to come to realize that God created all those things that were making us sick too, but the intent wasn't for them to be in the human being. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Everything has a place somewhere. It's just that when you put it in the wrong place, it causes a problem.
Right. Well, I don't know if you know about this story, but in Europe they have created a cow with a human immune system. And to do this, they on a genetic level modified these animals from the embryos, and it had to go through like a chicken and a cow. I think a pig. I don't quote me on that. I'd have to look it up. But what you're saying, you think about this. They're using it to produce antibodies for drugs and vaccinations and things. There are like mad cow disease that human beings can't get that normally. But when you start combining our DNA, these diseases are going to hybrid, and we're going to start to get things that normally humans were not intended to be able to receive or to even incubate. It shouldn't be able to survive in us, but because we're mixing these DNA and things, we're going to have even more.
The other thing too is that, like our food sources are getting the same
genetic modification.
Well, they're getting inoculations like we are. And what that does, it does the same thing as it changes the intestinal tract and allows them to harbor and carry more disease. So then where does that disease get transferred to? In milk and food and meat and all that back to us. So people that eat raw meat kind of like really, eat rare and raw meat really kind of skews me out, because there could be, live parasites or things like that in that can be really harmful to the human being.
The Bible says not to eat anything with the blood in it.
Exactly.
And for our listeners, that is not, yes, that is stated in Leviticus when it talks about the Levitical law and the dietary laws, but it actually is, as we've been going through the Bible again, Sam and I have with our wives, it's stated right after the flood, do not eat the blood.
Right.
Yeah, it's got to be cooked out. So, guys, I love my medium rare, but, we got to give it up. It's not good for us.
Normally, though, if you have a good intestinal tract and an operating immune system, if something foreign like that came into your body would just take it right back out. Right. But it's the state of our bodies as well that we can't handle those things anymore. So we're in that last 4 years, and we're with this doctor that, was really looking deep, into things, and immediately. We went to him because a friend had taken her son there. I have another friend whose son was diagnosed with Lyme, and he was really called a schizophrenic Lyme. But he would come to stop signs and be the passenger in a car, and he would get out, and then he would start running around the car and stuff, and he was slashing his wrists, and he was beating on his parents and everything. Well, This doctor tested him immediately and found him full of lead. That was our introduction to metals. Metals could be something inside the body causing disease, not just infectious agents, but metals.
Where does the lead come from?
Well, he was pretty big into smoking cigarettes. People don't realize there's lead. Cigarettes are lead and have lead in them.
I did not know that.
And he was getting cigarettes from the Indians, and I think, or Native Americans or whatever, from somewhere. It was a special source or whatever, but they believed that that's where the lead was coming from for him. However, my son doesn't smoke, and he had lead in him. Now, teeth metal. You have to understand that we're doing a lot with our teeth, and we were found with. This is a really interesting thing. My children were found positive for teeth metal mercury, and none of them had teeth metal. So
where did that come from?
In utero.
I remember her talking about this.
In utero, my children absorbed my metals.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I remember. For our listeners that don't know, we've had a previous conversation with Lori, and she's explained all this. So we're referring back to that conversation.
Yeah. So that was one thing I really wanted to get across to people, because and the diseases too, like people would say with my husband, we try to treat a lot of things simultaneously, because between husband and wife you can't, I don't believe you can transfer metals, but infectious agents, but they wouldn't say that Lyme, could go from mother to child. And then studies came out showing that mothers can pass these organisms on down to their children. And then we proved that mothers can pass, metals, and so maybe chemicals and things as well. So, if you're sick, they say usually the oldest child gets the brunt of what you have going on. And my son was the most severe out of the three.
That makes sense.
Children, he got the brunt of it.
So how can we both have young children?
We have one each. So
yes.
Brunt of whatever.
Right. That's about to change for you. But what can we do to help them now, like get these things out of their body?
Wow. Like we've taken things like we've taken something called a heart detox product, which is what we took a lot of, but it has EDTA in it, and I don't think you necessarily give that to real little kids. But there are probably foods that you can, things like chlorella, like a lot of green foods and things like that'll help the body. Again, it's your liver and your kidneys that will help the body process that out on its own. Okay.
Were your children vaccinated?
Yeah, my kids were vaccinated, but when Allie was around, when we first started getting sick and being seen, our doctors told us to stop vaccinating.
Wow.
They clearly said that my son's autistic and cerebral palsy tendencies could be from vaccination, and so we stopped. My youngest daughter, Allie, is our healthiest child, and she has had the least amount of vaccine of all 3 children.
That's exact. My uncle, he has 3 sons and 1 daughter. The daughter is adopted. The 3 sons are biological. The older 2 were vaccinated, and then the youngest of the 3 was not vaccinated. And they say the same thing. He's the healthiest. He just gets better in like a day. Like every time they get sick or whatever.
Mm-hmm. My 2 oldest children, and this is something you can check into because you do see alternative care doctors, they took nosodes, which are homeopathics for the vaccines. They counteract what the vaccines do.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know if you know about homeopathy, and I'm not too well versed, but you give a little dose of the same thing, and somehow your body is able to rid or fight that off.
Okay.
And they both, because my children, Ryan and Kara, were vaccinated for all the childhood measles, mumps, and they all had live measles, mumps, chickenpox, and rubella in them. And when I get to the, in this 3rd, 4th year that I'm talking to you about, I'll tell you why I believe that to happen. We found metals. We got rid of those. We continue with chiropractic. I actually grew an inch in my spine when it untwisted.
Sure.
I grew 1 inch.
Okay, yeah.
I grew 1 inch. And stuck with diet changes and so forth. And then we came to a point in time where I was doing really well. And then all of a sudden I had 2 3-inch tumors in my ovaries. And I said, how can we come this far, do all this, and now this is going on with me? What am I doing? We got rid of metals, we got rid of chemicals. Isopropyl alcohol is another big problem. A lot of people throw that on their wounds and things right away. But isopropyl is really bad for the liver. It goes directly to the liver and junks up the liver.
You mean like rubbing alcohol?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, anytime we buy cosmetics or
Germix,
body products or hair shampoo and stuff like that, we look to make sure there's not anything with a PROP in it. It's propylene or it's petroleum based.
Polypropylene.
Yeah, all those things are petroleum based, and what they do is they're harmful to your liver.
You see that on almost everything.
Propylene glycol, it's in a lot of things. So we try to stay away from anything with a PROP, as much as we can. So my son we got rid of that by doing something called I can't think of what it's called, but you put safflower oil or sunflower oil in your mouth, and you can try this. That how it's yellow and clear, and you swish it back and forth for about 15 minutes, and it turns white, and that's your body drawing out toxicities. Don't ever swallow it. You want to spit it out and then clean your mouth really good. But it's a really good way to draw those kinds of things out of your body from your mouth. So
safflower oil?
Safflower or sunflower oil. Yeah. You put like a tablespoon in your mouth and you swish it for like 15 minutes.
What's it taste like?
You really don't taste it because it's oil.
Right. Okay.
Sunflower oil is not bad. I mean, it's just that it turns into this white liquid that just has junk in it, and you get rid of it that way. So that's how Ryan got rid of isopropyl, and he had so much isopropyl because he had such acne issues, and he was always putting those kind of things on his face.
I had acne. I used an acne free. It's basically proactive, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's full of isopropyl.
Oh, I have to get some sunflower oil.
Yeah, it's got all that stuff, and so isopropyl is another. There's all these things that just really shouldn't, be in your body, and they are. They're not maybe the direct cause, but they're indirect ways that are continue to keep you kind of sick.